With inflation on the rise and a supply crisis causing empty shelves in stores around the country, many American families are likely to face a difficult holiday this season. Thankfully, the Biden administration has a plan in place to offer some relief. Oh no, not for you, not for struggling Americans, for illegal immigrants who violated our laws. Up to $1 million per family. Seriously. I mean, you didn't think they gave a damn about you, right? Take a closer look at this bizarre story in tonight's Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. There are very few times when the Biden administration does something that I say they can't be serious, right? Because we have very low expectations for them. We've seen how poor they are at governance. We've seen how weak they are when it comes to the economy, to the rule of law. In fact, they weaponize the DOJ and other aspects of the apparatus of government for their own political ends. So what really are they going to draw the line at? Well, certainly not the southern border. They have a de facto open border status right now. The border's the worst it's ever been. And on top of that, they want to really add insult to injury. This from the Wall Street Journal. The Biden administration is in talks to offer immigrant families that were separated during the Trump administration around $450,000 a person in compensation. The U.S. Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services are considering payments that could amount to close to $1 million a family. The total potential payout could be $1 billion or more. Let's just take a moment here. So families who came to the U.S.-Mexico border, knowing what they were doing was illegal, entering the U.S. illegally, overwhelmingly lying to Border Patrol officers and immigration officials about fleeing violence at home. They were trained to say certain things by the cartels to get around the credible fear standard at our southern border. It's all a big fraud. It's meant to get them to the front of the immigration line to cheat our system. But the Trump administration decided that they were going to try to disincentivize this activity, and so they enforced the law. The law means incarceration. Now, you don't have facilities, nor was there in place any procedure to keep incarcerated families all together, so then there was a separation when the adults had to be incarcerated and processed from the children. And as a result of all these decisions, all the things that went on, now we're talking about a Biden administration that is looking to pay $450,000 an individual, up to $1 million a family for this, for people who came into the country illegally. We're not talking about loss of life here. We're not talking about physical abuse. We're talking about people that were separated for a period of time, and now the DOJ wants to pay for psychological damage done, of course, by the Trump administration. The ACLU, which is kicking at the load-bearing walls of American civilization in every way that it can. That's what it exists to do. Certainly not civil liberty, certainly not liberty in any context. ACLU hates actual liberty. They're representing the families in one of the lawsuits. They've identified about 5,500 children separated at the border over the course of the Trump administration. That's citing figures provided by the government. So this could be up to $1 billion. Now, of course, the ACLU likes this whole plan. They put out a statement, the Biden administration is correct to provide relief to the children and families affected by the government's horrific practice of family separation. Their suffering is something that we'll always live with. It is a deep moral stain on our country. We need to make it right. And this includes not simply any monetary support, but a path to remain here. That is what is right and fair. Okay, so what's right and fair is not only do we have to have taxpayers make some of these illegal immigrants possibly millionaires at a time when American families are struggling more and more to buy basic goods and necessities. The shelves are increasingly empty. Inflation means everything is more expensive. Wages are not keeping up with these rises in the cost of living. And we're going to be funding this kind of madness. It's just crazy, right? I mean, here's a way to put it in context. The Biden administration is now looking to write bigger checks to the families of those who were separated for a time. They're not separated forever. It hasn't been, years and years and years where no one's been able to see anybody. They're not held in detention facilities for years. Separated for a period of time because of the decision to enter the country illegally. The Biden administration is going to be paying those individuals more than they pay the families of fallen soldiers who die. That's right, die fighting for this country. In fact, as Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee has pointed out, this plan to pay illegal immigrants will mean that they are paid more than 9/11 families. Watch.
9/11 families, military families where they have a loved one who made that ultimate sacrifice. They're not getting this kind of payout. And Harris, we don't even know what legal authority the president has to be doing this. We would like to know what legal authority that he is using to have DHS, HHS, and the Department of Justice go negotiate these prepayments to these individuals that have broken the law at the southern border.
That's a good question. Could the Biden administration just decide unilaterally to write checks to, why not give $1 million to every illegal who comes into the country? You know, a big redistribution of wealth program. I mean, that's kind of what they're talking about anyway. They're just limiting it to those who are separated at the border. But why can't Biden do that for every family that comes? Every illegal who comes to the country, as we know, it'll be about 1.8 million, maybe 2 million for this year. Could write $1 million check to all of them, right? Why not? Oh, is there any limitation to the Biden administration's authority, really? Is there any limitation to their absurdity, their willingness to make sure U.S. sovereignty is a joke? It doesn't seem like it. This situation's only going to get worse. As long as the incentives stay what they are, and this has all been a conscious decision by the Biden team to make it not only likely that illegals will be able to cross and stay in the United States, but that there are benefits that are increasingly attached to this. That they will probably be able to stay in the country, overwhelmingly, 99% of them will be able to stay in the country forever once they gain initial access. Beyond that, they'll get citizenship. They'll get all of the access to Obamacare and other state and federal programs in order to redistribute wealth to folks, right? That the welfare state of America is open to anyone who comes here legally or illegally. That is the Biden administration position. And so as a result, you have these migrant caravans. Here's another one. Headed to the U.S.-Mexico border right now. Several thousand migrants are traveling in a large group through southern Mexico toward the U.S. They're headed to Del Rio, Texas, or maybe Yuma, Arizona, according to Border Patrol agents who have reviewed government intelligence reports. The 2,000 to 3,000 migrants are part of the Guatemala-Mexico border heading north on foot late last week. Let's be very clear, folks. This is just one caravan. There are other caravans as well. We are looking at unprecedented numbers of illegals coming into the United States across the U.S.-Mexico border, and this is in direct response to Biden administration policy. They are doing this because the Biden administration makes it easy for them to get in the country and stay in the country. And now, on top of all of that, there are some who will be given checks. In fact, if you remember, there are some places that during the COVID pandemic decided to give the families of illegal immigrants, just because it was COVID, large sums of money. So this is what we're seeing now. The federal government thinks that it has a right to redistribute taxpayer dollars to people who have, under federal law, no legal right whatsoever to be in the country. The Biden administration has contempt for the American people. That's what this really is, contempt. Because illegals are better than you are, don't you understand that? That's what Democrats think. Illegal immigrants are better than Americans. And therefore they deserve this money. They deserve a lot more. They deserve citizenship. They deserve to be able to outvote you. That's the whole point. I want to talk to you about protecting yourself from online criminals. Look, the threat of some cyber thief stealing your credit card isn't really your biggest risk online. Your massive risk is that he takes over ownership of your home. It's called home title theft. The FBI calls it one of the fastest growing crimes. Cybercriminals hack into vulnerable government, bank, or mortgage company servers where copies of your home's title is stored. Then that thief will forge your signature stating you sold your home to him. He'll borrow on your home and leave you in debt. You won't know until collection notices show up. Protect your most valuable asset. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Use promo code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO. We'll be right back. Joe Biden was in Rome on Sunday for this year's annual G20 summit, where the topic of climate change was front and center. Biden has been vocal over his stance on the efforts of reducing carbon emissions around the globe. What better way to address the climate crisis with the other world leaders than to have an 85-car motorcade? That's right, 85 cars escorting him around Rome. Well, if he's so outspoken on reducing the state of the climate emergency, why hasn't the president been able to put pressure on China or India, which are actually the two biggest CO2 emitters in the world and polluters? Morgan ZEGERS, contributor here at the First TV, joins me to debunk the hypocrisy. Morgan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Buck?
I'm all right. Although, when I see world leaders all gathered together and I see a gathering, a climate gathering going on where there are people who still want to worship a child prophet known as Greta Thunberg around all this, I start to wonder about the emotional health of many millions and millions of people around the world. But let's just first start with Joe Biden before we get into that. Here he is talking about, well, Biden stuff in Rome. Check it out.
Mr. President, did the issue of abortion come up at all?
No, it didn't. It came up and just talked about the fact that he was happy I was a good Catholic and I should keep receiving communion.
Joe Biden's a good Catholic, huh? Yeah, not so much.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Buck, when I watch this kind of stuff, I really am like, wow, he's like a propaganda bot. He just says these utterly absurd things that average Americans that are watching this on TV, we go, he can't be serious, right? It's getting that bad.
Yeah, it is indeed. Here he is. I was speaking about climate change, by the way, and I just wanted to throw out that one Biden thing where he says he's a good Catholic. Of course, he's a huge proponent of abortion for all 9 months of a pregnancy, in direct contradiction to church teaching. And actually, some bishops have called for Biden to be denied communion, which, as a Catholic, I think he should be. But instead, the Pope is saying, oh, yeah, he's great, because he's great on climate change. That's one thing where the Pope, unfortunately, and Biden align. Here's Biden talking about how climate change is destroying everything, man. I mean, it's everywhere. It's ruining stuff. Here he is.
Climate change is already ravaging the world. We've heard from many speakers. It's not hypothetical. It's not a hypothetical threat. It's destroying people's lives and livelihoods, and doing it every single day. It's costing our nations trillions of dollars. Record heat and drought, fueling more widespread and more intense wildfires in some places and crop failures in others. Record flooding and what used to be a once-in-a-century storms are now happening every few years.
First of all, where is he talking about? How? What are the numbers? I mean, it's just, does it even matter, right? It's just, this is a religious belief for people who think they're too smart for religion. That seems to be what this is. And Biden is trying to be a high priest in it.
Yeah, I mean, Buck, we are in what? It's now November 2021 of this pandemic that we've been experiencing for who knows how long at this point. Every day is like the other. I'm really worried, though, because if you just, I don't mean to diminish anything about COVID-19, but if you look at the symptoms that people get, if you look at the overall impact, and then you consider how drastic the world has changed in terms of just American leadership, Western philosophy, the rejection of choice and the embrace of authoritarianism and tyranny, all for the coronavirus. Now what's about to happen if our world leaders like President Joe Biden, the leader of the free world, are telling us that now climate change is ravaging the planet and destroying lives? It makes me a little nervous for what's to come.
Yeah, if they can shut down your church and your business and tell you to stay at home and force needles into your arm and all these other things based upon a virus with a 99.7% overall survival rate, much, much higher than that for people under the age of 60 all around the world, as we know. And then you have Biden walking around at this climate conference and then standing up on stage and muttering stuff like this. I mean, this is crazy town. Play it.
This is a challenge of our collective lifetimes. The existential threat to human existence as we know it. And every day we delay, the cost of inaction increases. So let this be the moment that we answer history's call here in Glasgow. Let this be the start of a decade of transformative action that preserves our planet and raises the quality of life for people everywhere.
Existential threat to human existence, which of course existential existence is kind of repetitive, but the idea here is that it's going to wipe us all out, Morgan. This is the President of the United States going on the world stage, so to speak, saying this. I mean, I think this should, in a more normal world, which we're not living in, unfortunately, anymore, this would get you put in a room with rubber walls. I mean, this are padded walls. This is pretty crazy.
Buck, my heart hurts watching that kind of stuff because I'm very well read on history. I'm a history nerd, and I'm specifically, honestly, not even just the 20th century, everything that happened then. If you look at the last 2 years, look what these people have done over the coronavirus. Like you said, over 99% rate of just being able to be like, okay, I got the coronavirus and I'm moving on. They ruined the planet, basically, the world economy, the national economy here in America over the coronavirus. And now the president of the United States is saying that climate change is an existential crisis that will take a 10-year period of transformation. I mean, they said that it would be a 2-week period of transformation to fix coronavirus. And now we have Joe Biden saying 10-year transformation is required for climate change. I will tell you, am nervous about what that means. My heart hurts hearing that because I know that we have a long road ahead. I'm begging the people out there that are watching and listening to this, really consider what's about to happen now. If they can justify their behavior over the last 2 years for a virus that's 99% survival rate.
Morgan, I just want to, before we switch topics, this was fun. Biden, of course, because we should get him a blanket for his knees and some applesauce and a sippy cup. Here he is at the conference falling asleep. I don't know if people have seen this or not. Look, we've all been there. What could be more boring? First of all, you're masked up, right? Because even though you're vaccinated, you have to be masked up indoors, which makes no sense, but they do it anyway. What could be more boring than being at a climate change conference and having to really pretend that you're afraid for humanity unless we make reductions to CO2 emissions that, by the way, the world is never going to make, and China and India aren't even taking this seriously. The whole thing is a joke. But anyway, I'd fall asleep too. It's the smartest thing he did while he was there. Let's go Brandon chants are out there, Morgan. Switching gears here for a second. We got media analysts and blue check liberals losing their minds over a Southwest Airlines pilot who said, "Let's go Brandon," allegedly, according to an Associated Press report. Not even clear if that's what he said. Some said he said, "Let's go Braves," but who cares? And then over at CNN, Asha Rangappa, formerly of the FBI, among the dumbest people on television, she compared his tweets to, well, ISIS. She said on Twitter, "As an experiment, I'd love for a Southwest Airlines pilot to say 'Long live ISIS' before taking off. My guess is that the plane would be immediately grounded, the pilot fired, statement issued by the airline within a matter of hours." Yeah, because making fun of Joe Biden and declaring one's association with a terrorist organization that murders thousands and thousands of people all over the world, that's the same thing, apparently, if you're a CNN analyst. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the left loves to be able to insert political thought and political action into every aspect of everyday life. But when we do it, it's like domestic terrorism. And this has been a long time coming. I mean, we see it on college campuses specifically. And the big concern is that a lot of people say, oh, those kids will grow up and they won't be so crazy. That's not happening anymore. These kids are graduating from their totalitarian little college campuses, and then they go off into the real world and they bring their same ideas of authoritarianism and totalitarianism into the workplace and into corporate America. But we're seeing this here with the vilification of anybody who dares to commit wrongthink. And that's what they want to ostracize this man from his position of power, his position of employment. And I just think it's hilarious. What they're doing here is they're saying that our political speech and thought is violence against them, comparing it to ISIS. And what the concern here is, and history shows it, when you convince someone that their speech and way of being and lifestyle is violence against other people, what happens next is the justification that you can then act upon them because you are preventing violence against others and saving others from harm.
Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Morgan. Great to see you, Morgan. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Buck.
Seems like everyone wants to invest in crypto these days, Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of the digital tokens out there. It's not easy to get started. That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with concierge-level customer service. It's one of the few U.S.-based cryptocurrency companies that'll answer your phone call and help you get started. Because your comfort and security is their absolute top priority. They offer you an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit losses without having to watch your account 24/7, a play money account so you can test the market without risking your money. Look, the crypto market's heating up. This could be a great time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. You need a team that has your back when it comes to your money. That's the folks at My Digital Money. Go to mydigitalmoney.com. Again, that's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back. Netflix getting some scrutiny again after the release of their new docuseries Colin in Black and White, in which former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick compared the NFL draft process to slavery. Take a look.
Before they put you on the field, teams poke, prod, and examine you, searching for any defect that might affect your performance. No boundary respected, no dignity left intact. I got your bid. 30, take it.
Unbelievable. Kaepernick spent half a decade asking NFL teams to give him another shot in the league, and now he's decided that actually being an NFL player is, as what you see here in the movie, is like being a slave. Yeah. Joining me now is former NFL safety and White House appointee Jack Brewer. Jack, thank you for being with us.
Great to be here, Bob.
I just want you to tell us what your reaction is as somebody, as an African-American who played in the NFL and had that incredible opportunity and obviously very well-paid opportunity. What do you think of Colin Kaepernick comparing the NFL Combine to a slave auction, which is what he did in that video?
I don't know. I mean, I went to the Combine, and if I'm a slave, I'm a pretty blessed slave, man. Beautiful family, live in a great country, all the freedoms that we have. You know, this sick and disgusting messaging from Colin Kaepernick, I call it the Colin Kaepernick doctrine. It's really pouring into the hearts and minds of so many young Black youth across this nation. And it's that victim mentality that really is going to be the detriment. And you're already seeing it. You're reading the math proficiency levels. Whenever you take a population that's already underserved and you start pouring in these excuses, and where you can even have multimillionaires, National Football League players, who now are believing that for some reason you're a slave. You know, it's really a disrespect to the men and women who died during slavery, the men and women who died fighting against slavery, no matter if it's white or Black people. Forget it, 1 million white people had to fight to help end slavery too. And so you're disrespecting everybody. You're disrespecting this nation and all that we fought for to become equal. And you're also disrespecting folks around the world where there's 17, 18 million slaves still today. And you have millions and millions of people trying to come to the United States of America to chase the American dream and to have the opportunities that we're all afforded. And then we have one of our most high profile Black leaders in our nation now, for some reason, trying to push this incredibly ignorant doctrine upon these poor kids. I just won't stand for it. I'll speak against it loudly because I think there's an anti-American spirit, an anti-Christ spirit that comes with Colin Kaepernick that we all must stand against.
Do you think that some people in the NFL, perhaps current or former players who have been supportive of Kaepernick, is there any chance in your mind that some of them may say, okay, well, this really does go too far? I mean, to say that the NFL Combine is a slave auction, I mean, because to your point, it's poison. I mean, it's ugly. Do you think there might be some NFL players who say enough is enough, or are they just going to be quiet and let this go?
I do. I think you'll have more coming out and standing against it. I think there's a lot more, normal-minded NFL players that you might see. A lot of folks feel pressure, from the whole BLM movement and a lot of what the left is trying to promote. They feel obligated to lock arms with Colin Kaepernick because he kneeled to the American flag. Unfortunately, I think a lot of athletes and entertainers, anyone who's felt the success and accomplished success in America has no right to speak like this because they're living examples of the opposite. And so for you try to hypnotize and use hypocrisy, really, when talking about everything that this country is affording people, it's really insincere. And I don't know, I hope more come out, but it wouldn't surprise me if more don't. We're in a weird time in our history. I work with young African-American kids all the time, every day. I have a youth center. We pour our heart and soul into these kids. We're dealing with a different type of spiritual battle right now in this nation. That's the reason why I talk about it. It gives me no pleasure to come out and speak about things like this, but you almost have an obligation as a Christian man. You almost have an obligation as an American to stand up to this type of doctrine, because it's not about me or you, Buck. It's about those young, most vulnerable inner city kids that, 70% of the Black kids don't have fathers already, that are influenced by this garbage that they see on TV and media companies like Netflix. That's what we're standing up against. It's a bigger picture than that. And so this is one that's not about us. It's not about our families that we can teach. It's about all those kids that are in those broken homes that don't have someone to come and explain what really this nation is about. That's being lost in our country right now.
Shifting gears for a moment, Jack, I want to get your take on the left's hypocrisy when it comes to athletes refusing the vaccine mandates. Kyrie Irving is an outspoken NBA player who prides himself on putting his beliefs ahead of his career. Just last year, liberal media praised him for his beliefs, prompting news articles like this op-ed from Complex. Kyrie Irving is one of the most polarizing athletes in sports today. He's never been afraid to speak his mind. That's no different in 2020. With the NBA recently coming to a halt in the bubble, looks very much so like Kyrie was right too. Everyone can agree it's inspiring. He's willing to speak his mind and often put his money where his mouth is. He stands for what he believes in, like many great athlete activists before him. Now, things have changed, it seems. Kyrie has quickly turned into a villain, Jack, according to liberal media. This is a headline in the Washington Post. Kyrie Irving's self-pitying refusal to get the vaccine is pathetic and dangerous. Wait, I thought Kyrie speaking out on his politics was amazing and he's a hero and he's great just for being willing to speak out, right? That was the standard. But all of a sudden, Kyrie Irving doesn't want to get the shot. And he's pathetic and dangerous, they tell us. Oh.
It is sick. These people are so twisted, I tell you, man. If you think that anyone that disagrees with you is evil, you got a problem. I mean, especially when you talk about something where we're arguing about Kyrie Irving taking a vaccine when there has been 0 professional athletes die from the coronavirus. There have been 0 college athletes die from the coronavirus. So what are we talking about here? Is he endangering himself? No, he's not. If you are going to follow the science, follow the science. And so this man who's already had the coronavirus, we know where he sits. Why are we going to force, or even, why do we even feel like we have the right to even talk about his decision on what he wants to do? The NBA should be ashamed of themselves for how they handle it. It shouldn't surprise anybody. You're talking about a league that has been putting Black Lives Matter and helping to raise millions of dollars for an anti-Christ organization that stood up against the family structure in America when the most critical, the most underserved population in our nation is our underserved Black boys, particularly young Black men that are reading and their math proficiency levels compared to third world countries. And so you have an NBA that will go out and promote themselves as someone standing up for African Americans, but at the same time, they raise money, millions of dollars, in support anti-Christ organizations. I'm done with them. I don't even watch basketball anymore. It really makes me sick to see so many people with such a huge platform and the ability to change lives in a positive way, stand up for all that's good in this nation, refuse to do so.
Jack,
it's gone too.
We really appreciate you coming on here, man, and speaking some truth. Thanks, and we hope you come back soon.
Anytime, brother. God bless you, man.
You too. Let's take a second to talk about one of the newest sponsors here on Hold the Line, Fume. Fume is the #1 natural way to quit smoking and vaping. Fume is all about creating positive habits. Here's how simple they make it. Fume created an amazing natural inhaler that allows your body to receive the amazing benefits from some of the world's best super plants. It's a Canadian-made, handcrafted wooden inhaler with no electronics, and it makes quitting smoking easier. Look, you need to check out Fume. This company is amazing. They've also got other areas of support beyond just helping you quit smoking. Go to Breathe Fume, that's F-U-M, breathefume.com/buck, and take their quiz to find out which super plants are best for you. It's quick, easy, and will point you to specific plants and the research behind them for their benefits. When you use code BUCK at checkout, you'll get 10% off. Breathe in the benefits of the world's super plants today. Don't wait. It's time to quit smoking or vaping. BreatheFume, FUM.com/buck. And we'll be right back with more. Hold the line. A nonprofit organization called the White Coat Waste Project has found that a lab in Tunisia tortured and killed dozens of dogs after infecting them with disease-causing parasites. This research was funded by Dr. Anthony Fauci's NIH, which sent a $375,000 grant to the lab. According to the nonprofit, the money went to, quote, drugging beagles and locking their heads in mesh cages filled with hungry sandflies so that the insects could eat them alive. Joining me now is the founder and president of the White Coat Waste Project, Anthony Bellotti. Anthony, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having us on. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, there's a lot I want to ask you here, and I talked about this in your group's findings on my radio show earlier this week, and I can tell you we had people from all over the United States calling in who are absolutely furious about this. As you know, Americans love their dogs. In your findings, I mean, I never even got to see What was the supposed rationale that this lab had for torturing dogs slowly to death and removing their vocal cords so that their screams, so to speak, could not be heard?
Yeah, it's NIH has some explaining to do on a lot of things right now. There's been a lot of confusion in the media and in the stories going around about these truly horrific findings that you're talking about that have united the country. The White Coat Waste Project launched the Beaglegate campaign and investigation. And what we found is it's not one lab in Tunisia. It's not two labs. It's not three labs. We've confirmed 4 separate and distinct labs funded by Fauci's NIAID for the Beagle experiments. We've been on this trail for a number of years. The first one we found was actually in his own intramural NIAID office, right in their own basement. They were doing these experiments with no pain relief and no anesthesia. Okay, that was the first one. The second one, that was sandfly. He was doing sandfly biting experiments in his own Maryland NIH lab. Number one. Number two, they did the same thing they were doing there with the sandflies, and then they outsourced it to Georgia. Okay, that's the second Beaglegate lab, taxpayer funded. All of it. The third Tunisia example, in which the NIAID funded the lab in Tunisia. Okay, another variation on a theme. The fourth one is the infamous debarking, cutting the vocal cords out, which is in California. This is, they call it Beaglegate for a reason. It's a widespread pattern of abuse because 50 cents on the dollar of Fauci's budget goes for animal experimentation. That's nearly $3 billion a year he's funding on these kinds of experiments. It's horrific. It's wasteful. It's wrong, and it's uniting everybody against it.
What were these experiments supposed to find out? I mean, usually you see something like this, animal testing, they'd say, okay, well, before we give a vaccine to humans, we might try it on a chimpanzee and see what the reaction is. What were they doing with sand fleas, beagles? Yeah. It just seems beyond belief that something so cruel could be underway. Was there some lofty justification from these bureaucrats for this?
You know, each one of them is, the answer is no. There is no lofty, there is no good justification for it. Lofty, veneer, sure. It's government. When have we ever met a government agency that doesn't like to spend money and then say, well, we need more research, let's do it again, and let's do it again, and another variation on a theme. Endless experimentation to know, grants that go on forever, that kind of thing. It's wasteful spending. What's going on at the NIH and Fauci's NIAID is no different than any government bureaucracy that has a spending problem. Dr. Fauci has a wasteful spending problem. And to answer your specific question, though, look, each one of those four separate and distinct Beaglegate labs, they're all a little bit different. The sandfly experiments, for example, where they gnaw at the beagle's ears, eating them, feeding on them. They're investigating a nasty parasitic disease that has very severe real world consequences for folks and some folks especially in third world. But for example, he was doing it in his own lab. He was doing it in his own lab with no anesthesia or pain relief. He was doing it at taxpayer expense. When he was finished with that, then they outsourced it to Georgia to do it again. Okay, the Georgia lab, the second example, they say that Fauci specifically, the NIAID specifically, demanded dogs, right? So not even some other animals, but dogs. So when he outsourced it to Georgia, the Georgia guys said, well, Fauci's people said we wanted dogs. Tunisia, another whole story, out in California, they're doing other things with the debarking. Look, it's a mess. There's a lot of labs. It's much more than just one. There's more than one sandfly biting experiment. The whole thing, we need to open the books and all.
So this is critical, Anthony, and we really appreciate you bringing this to light. So as horrific as it is, I give people on radio a content warning before I even describe the Tunisia lab because it's really upsetting to people, and it's upsetting to me, quite honestly.
$3 billion a year on animal testing he spends.
Is there any way, because this is where you know where this is going to go. Dr. Fauci, I mean, I call him frequently the little lab coat tyrant. So everyone who watches this knows I've been a huge critic of his for a long time on COVID response and other things. But on this issue, it looks like he's just going to say, oh, it's a big organization. I have a big budget. I had no idea this was
like Wuhan.
Right. So tell us
just like
if
Wuhan.
tell us what the reality is there.
That's exactly what they're going to say. They're already saying it. But you do something once, it's an accident. You do something twice, it's a coincidence. You do something 3 times, it's a habit or a pattern. You do something 4 times, it's we're in scandal territory now, and that's just the beagles. There's a lot of other waste, fraud, and animal abuse that they're funding all around the world. So $3 billion, that buys a lot of abuse. And every year after year after year. What are they going to say? Well, it's the Wuhan all over again. The Wuhan lab is an animal lab. That is part of Fauci's wasteful spending. We exposed the payouts there. We were the first ones to do that. And there's a reason for that. We're the animal funding guys. That's what we do. And we're a single issue organization. We don't take a position on these other issues that you've educated folks about. We're just the guys who do the find, expose, defund on animal lab spending, taxpayer. And Dr. Fauci is at the center of both of these scandals, Wuhan and Beaglegate.
It's amazing because you see so many of these products out there that will always reassure people, no animal testing, right? This has actually become a sales pitch because people don't want there to be, cruelty against animals to see if a certain hair care product or whatever it may be works a certain way. I know that in situations perhaps they will use animal testing if they feel there's no other way to prevent putting humans at risk. But animal testing on the scale you're talking about, $3 billion all over the world? Who's doing oversight on this? Where's the accountability?
No, there is no accountability. That's how we end up with gain of function bat experiments over there. Humanized mice. Who's watching the store? No one.
Apparently nobody was watching Wuhan.
Why do we have 4 Beagle Labs?
Yeah, and we're all
and those humanized mice, bats, and beagles. That's the 21st century picture of what animal experimentation looks like. It's not bunnies with mascara in their eyes anymore. That was the 70s, the 80s. That ain't happening in the U.S. really anymore. The government spends more than all private industry combined. And for the private industry that is doing it, the government is forcing them to do it and mandating it on them, right? Mandates. Yeah. The government spending problem that's why we talk about white coat waste. It's wasteful spending and animal experimentation in the 21st century are inextricably linked.
Anthony, we got to have you back as you get more on this because it sounds like you're just at the tip of the iceberg with it, and people do need to know about this. And I can tell you, your group's findings this week got a lot of attention, as I'm sure you know. So
we'll have the findings on this and Wuhan. We've got them both.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Appreciate your work. We'll talk to you.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
I want to tell you about My Digital Money. Crypto market's hot right now. It seems like everybody wants to get in on the action. There's so many currencies to choose from. Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these digital tokens out there. It's not easy to get started. That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. They'll actually answer your phone call and help you get started. Your comfort and security is their top priority. Look, the crypto market's heating up. This could be the best time in a long time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com, and we'll be right back with more. Hold the line. Climate activist Greta Thunberg led an awkward chant at the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, and even MSNBC can't deny the embarrassment that is President Joe Biden. It is time for quick hits. Let's first start with this. Look, we've all been there. You're at a meeting. It's a little warm in the room, maybe. That really always got me over the edge here. A little warm in the room. You're at a meeting. It's kind of boring. You're kind of bored. You're like, what am I even watching? Why am I sitting here? And then all of a sudden you feel that wooziness come up. We've all been there. But, if you're the leader of the free world, you're at a big climate conference, don't you think maybe you just take a little caffeine, drink a little coffee, make yourself snap out of it? Joe Biden is at this UN climate conference situation, and he fell asleep. Now remember, I think the climate change conference is an absurdity. I think that this is a non-existent problem, and these people are all basically worshiping at some false golden calf here. This is like a religion. It doesn't make any sense. But they think that they're actually saving the world. They believe that this is an existential threat. And so if you don't take it as seriously, you're a bad person. Here's MSNBC, who's very upset. Well, let's be honest, a little upset with Biden for falling asleep.
This is the fifth day of the president's overseas tour, and he was seen on camera with his eyes closed. It appears that perhaps he was dozing, and in these settings, cameras are all around, and the camera caught President Biden, who turned 79 later this month, with his eyes closed for a period of time. And you're right, these can be embarrassing situations. You have the contrast of leaders, including President Biden, calling for the urgency of these issues of addressing climate, and a moment like that in a session can be a political obstacle for a moment.
What she's saying is the guy's too old, and people think he's already in the early stages of dementia, and now it looks like he needs nap time in the middle of the day, even during major conferences, because he's too old for the job, which many of us said all along. In fact, Democrats used to recognize this themselves, and yet here we are. He's the guy who is the president of the United States, which is absurd. The opposite of too old for the job may be not old enough for the job. In fact, I think it is. And when you're talking about global leader of the climate change movement, such as it is, 18-year-old Greta Thunberg it's remarkable. I mean, I think that it's sad that there are so many adults that worship this child god as though she has anything important to say, honestly, about anything, and that they like having a child chide them and tell them their societies are weak and corrupt and decrepit because they're not taking climate change seriously enough. I don't know, folks. You got to bust out the Freudian stuff here. This makes no sense. But if you want to get an idea of the intellectual level of some of Greta Thunberg's stuff, here she is leading a chant outside one of these climate change conferences, and this is what she says.
No more exploitation of people and nature and the planet. No more exploitation. No more blah, blah, blah. No more whatever the they're doing inside there. No more blah, blah, blah. No more blah, blah, blah. No more blah, blah, blah. No more blah, blah, blah.
No more blah, blah, blah. They're actually chanting that because it doesn't even matter. Because Greta Thunberg could walk out there and just say blah, 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 and they would all say she's brilliant, she's saving the world. Because this is the unreality. This is some other alternate universe where adults should be paying attention to an ill-educated 18-year-old girl who clearly has some issues. Okay, so the View Halloween show praised a kid dressed as a booster vaccine shot with a vaccine passport. This was a thing that happened.
Here we have our adorable COVID-19 vaccine, but we added a twist. We added the booster. We put an actual kid's booster, my son's booster, on the back of the costume. And our trick-or-treater is ready to go. She's got her COVID-19 passport little book there. That's cool. And she's reminding everybody to go get your boosters.
Go get your boosters. I mean, okay, fine. Whatever. I don't know. That one doesn't upset me. This one is going to upset me, though. Colin Kaepernick, among the most exploitative and idiotic people in American political and cultural discourse these days. I mean, just a true moron in every sense, and also really damaging to the country, really dishonest with what he is peddling. Here he is telling people that there are white people in America in general only like black characters with, quote, white characteristics. This is from his Netflix special.
Over the years, there have been some very popular TV shows starring black people. These shows share archetypal black characters, including social outcasts who assimilate or conform, like Carlton Banks or Steve Urkel.
Wow, you guys have got some real A-list people here.
White people love these dudes. Everything from the way they dress, the way they talk.
You're our man.
Even the way they dance. It's also non-threatening.
James Spurlock, we call him Twofer because with him you get a 2-for-1. He's a black guy and a Harvard guy.
These characters have come to be known by the term acceptable Negro. The acceptable Negro is a black character who inhabits white characteristics, who makes white people feel comfortable.
He's a moron. And the lead characters on those shows don't even have these so-called characteristics that he's identifying. But a lot of people on the left should feel ashamed for supporting this idiot. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.